everybody, and welcome to the last episode of Season 2 of the Coffin Corner Podcast. I'm your host, GoodNightPunk, and with me as always on this long Season 2 journey is my good friend Richie. Richie, what's going on?
It has been a long season.
It's
funny, like, the playoffs kind of flew by. In my opinion, and I'm like sitting here and I'm like, man, the Super Bowl's this weekend. Like, it feels like we just started the season. We just drafted our fantasy football teams. Like, I don't know, man. It was a quick year, weird year, but I'm excited for it to be over because my team sucks and we need the off season to start.
Yeah, right. It's crazy too because it's like I remember. Between season 1 and season 2 of the podcast, it felt like forever till we started up again. I almost was like, I don't even remember doing this last year. That's how long it was. And we're about to go right back into that. But somehow the season just flies. It's crazy.
I know, it does. There's lulls in the middle, like when you're in like October and November, it feels like, oh, it's kind of dragging. Then all of a sudden from Thanksgiving to the Super Bowl just is a blink.
Yeah, that was so quick. It was crazy. Yeah. Well, reminiscing on this past season, as well as past Super Bowls, that brings us right into our top 5. And I thought, since it's Super Bowl weekend, we could talk about the top 5 NFL halftime shows that we can remember. Because there were a lot of them, and I was looking through the list. I made my list, and then I went back to look at who all had done it that I'd completely forgotten, and there were a lot of people that I had forgotten did it. So, yeah.
Yeah, this was a tough list. We've got a few the same, just because they're, in my opinion, some of the most iconic memories for Super Bowls for me.
Yeah.
But I don't pay much attention to the halftime show usually, unless there's something very specific that stands out.
Unless, so for example, this year I could give 2 craps less about Usher. I'm just saying.
I forgot he was the performer until you just said that.
Yeah, I'm like, I was before the podcast when I was making the notes. I'm like, who's the oh, it's Usher. That's right. Yeah, that doesn't excite me at all.
And I mean, I like some of his songs that came out when I was like in high school or just out of high school, but it's like, yeah, I just don't care. The only way the Super Bowl halftime show this year is going to be memorable is if Taylor Swift shows up and just like takes over. That's
Wouldn't
the only
that
thing.
Be hilarious? Has she ever done? She hasn't done a halftime show, has she?
She has not, and they missed the mark not having her do it this year.
Seriously, she's gonna be there. So,
I honestly, like, all joking aside about Taylor Swift and how annoying it is, I hope that she does that. Because it would be absolutely iconic if she just walks on stage during the halftime show and it just everybody would freak out. You'd get the people who would be extremely pissed, and then you get the people that like, oh my God, Taylor Swift.
The gang of Usher fans.
Yeah, yes. No, I just mean the people that are like, Taylor Swift's taking over the NFL. They show her too much.
You know what's funny is they've actually broken this down, and I'm actually to the point now where I'm like, it doesn't really matter because they show her for a total of like, what, 18 seconds a game? How often do you... is it better to look at Taylor Swift than it is Jerry Jones for 5 minutes a game? Like, right. What's the difference? You know?
Don't care.
Do not care anymore.
Said it, but they said Taylor Swift's the biggest star in that stadium. Like, more people know her than they do Travis Kelce or Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. Like, we know because we're football fans, but the average... worldwide citizen knows Taylor Swift. Yeah. So, hey, show her. Use the marketing. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. So
I have a friend who's in Vegas right now, and she said there's so many people in Chiefs gear, so many more than 49ers. And I'm like, yeah, they're all bandwagon Chiefs fans because they like Swift and have no idea about the NFL. Like, and that's fine. It's good for the NFL. It just, I don't know. People get annoyed by it for some reason. And I just...
Listen, this is quite literally, the same type of thing that happened when the New England started getting good.
Oh, yeah. You're going to get the bandwagoners.
I'm Giselle on a much lower celebrity popularity, but so whatever. All right, well, I'll start off with my first one. I remember back when Bruno Mars was not as popular as he even is today. I remember I bought Bruno Mars his first debut album, and listened to the whole thing through. It was really, really good. I really liked Bruno Mars. And I think it was within a few years of that coming out, he was doing a halftime show. And I was really excited about that. I remember watching that show. And then on top of that, that same year, Red Hot Chili Peppers, another band I love, was sharing the halftime show with him. So I remember that one pretty well. And it's kind of like they used to, thank goodness they don't anymore. They used to give all older artists would play halftime. So this was kind of like right in that section where they started transitioning out of that. But having Bruno Mars and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who are both iconic, that was a fun one for me.
Yeah. I do remember them because I like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And Bruno Mars got some good songs. I don't remember moments from it, but I remember it happening. This type of thing. But,
well, that's crazy because I remember when I looked it up after I'd written it down, because I only wrote down Bruno Mars. I didn't remember the Red Hot Chili Peppers part of it. And the other funny part about it was 2 years later, Bruno Mars was part of the halftime show with some other people. And I was like, he was in it twice? I didn't even remember that.
That's funny. Yeah, I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
My first one, it's funny. I thought this happened last year, but apparently it was 2 years ago. Was Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, Kendrick Lamar, 50 Cent, and whoever Anderson .Paak is. But I remember this because of like the White House thing that they were all performing in. It looked like a dollhouse.
And it had levels they were all standing in.
Yes. It was a weird dollhouse type thing. Yeah, I remember that.
Remember 50 Cent hanging upside down rapping?
Yes.
Wasn't that a thing?
Yeah. Yes. It was it was awesome. But I could have sworn this was last year, so I had to look up last year's, and it was Rihanna. No memory whatsoever.
That was last year?
That was last year.
Well, Joy, when I asked Joy if she remembered any, she mentioned a couple of the ones we're going to talk about here in a second. But the other one she said was Rihanna. So,
I
was like, well, she remembered.
Yeah, I did not.
All right. This next one, I remember for one specific thing that happened during it. And it might jog your memory. Well, the drones was part of it. And that was right when it was happening. But remember that her halftime show started and she was on top of the stadium?
Yes.
And I think that part was pre-recorded because the jump looked so fake. But she was singing America the Beautiful, I think. And then she just kind of did this fake jump, like she was jumping in the stadium. And then she came out of the rafters, dropping down, singing Poker Face. Yeah, that was pretty good.
That was I had forgotten about the jump thing. The only thing I remembered was the drones.
The drones, the Intel drones,
stuck in my mind. Yes.
Yeah.
Because at that point, everyone's on social media. Oh my God, the drones are going to take over, and here we are 7 years later, and no.
With AI and
yeah, it was pretty awesome watching them all fly around.
And Vision Pros. We're starting to look like futuristic movies now.
My next one is 2013 Beyonce with Destiny's Child special guest stars, and I remember this mostly for the picture of Beyonce making a weird face. I'm sure you've seen it, where it came from this halftime show where she's they caught her making just the weirdest faces, and she freaked out and tried to get them all scrubbed from the internet.
I just looked it up.
Yes.
Oh, there it is.
I just remember her getting so upset and wanting them scrubbed from the internet and being that's not humanly possible.
I clicked on one from SB Nation and the headline is, "It's been 8 years since Beyonce's publicist tried to remove this."
Yep. Yeah, so I remember that one for sure.
That's a pretty good one. I'd forgotten about that.
Your next one's my number one. I can't believe it's not your number one.
Oh, I will never not think of what my number one is as my number one.
I know why your number one is your number one, and that's why it's on my list as well.
Yeah. So mine is Richie's number 1, my number 3. Janet Jackson, Kid Rock, P. Diddy, Nelly, and Justin Timberlake. Which is hilarious and sad that this happened because this is when they were supposed to break away from 60 and 70-year-old artists playing halftime to like the new young hip artists. And then there was the Janet Jackson nip slip at halftime.
Yes.
And they're like, we're going back to old people.
You got a air quotes nip slip on that one.
Yeah, because it had... what do they call those?
Show off. It had like a
pasty
ring around it.
I thought she had a pasty on.
No,
which is why everyone thought it was planned.
It's like it's like a sun, but like in the middle it's hollow, so it fit around her nipple.
Oh God, that's hilarious.
Yeah, like. But what's funny is you look at this. So
still probably like
Janet Jackson, Kid Rock, P. Diddy, Nelly, Justin Timberlake. That's actually a really good assortment of different types of music. But all anyone's gonna remember about this is nipple.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
That's all.
I was watching this.
A long time was remembered on that.
Yeah, I was watching this at the house of some family from the church when I teach Calvary when I was going at the time, and like it was just a bunch of like youth group kids gathered around the TV watching it, and then we all just kind of stayed silent afterwards. Like, did we just see what we think we saw?
Yeah. Don't tell the adults; they'll turn it off.
Yeah. Is that a nipple? Well, yeah. I mean, iconic.
Classic.
My next one. So the rest of mine you also have on your list.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about number 1 just now. My number 3 is your number 2, and it's The Weeknd, because I will never not get over the meme of him wandering through the
confused
hall of
in the room of mirrors with lights.
Yes.
That is
just fantastic.
After I finished my list and I was waiting for my parents to come over, I sat and I watched that halftime show again, and it just cracked me up.
Oh yeah, it was
I Can't Feel My Face was the song, and he's just roaming around there, and suddenly a bunch of people show up with like masks on, bandages wrapped around their face, and he still looked confused the whole time.
Yeah,
great.
And now I remember it was because it was like during COVID.
Yeah.
So it was like, I don't remember if there were people at that Super Bowl or not. There had to have been, but yeah, it was a good show. I mean, he put on a good show, but that one moment. I mean, you still see that GIF, like it's awesome.
I would still use it.
Yeah.
Whenever I want to,
it's a good halftime show.
Whenever I want to portray confusion, I use that one.
Yep.
Good old. If you can meme the halftime show, it's a good one, and which is why the next one is my number 1.
And my number 2.
Yes. And so that's Katy Perry. Katy Perry's halftime show. And honestly, when I said that this was my number 1 to my wife, she said, it's not because of Katy Perry. I'm like, that was just the Left Shark halftime show.
It really was. I mean, might as well just say Left Shark's halftime show.
Yes. I mean, I don't think this portrays to anyone that's my PlayStation friend, but my login avatar for my PlayStation is a shield of Left Shark. And it's been that way for years. I just added Left Shark to my account because it was
such a great moment, man. And it's funny, like TikTok wasn't around at the time, which is a damn shame, but like Twitter and Instagram, everything was just Left Shark. He was the hero of the internet.
Yes, he was so great. That I can still see his little fins going all over the place while everyone else is in synchronization.
I remember people would start saying like Left Shark energy.
Yeah.
I was like, that's such a great saying.
Live every day like you're Left Shark.
Yes.
Dance like no one's watching. Only
like
everyone.
Millions of people are watching.
Only everyone's watching.
Oh man,
that's great.
Good times.
All right, well, bonus question I got for you, because I was thinking about this when we were talking about all these shows and talking about Usher being the halftime show. Is there a artist you can think of that you would like to see be the halftime show that hasn't been?
The problem is my musical taste is, as you know, mostly emo and like alternative. So none of my favorite bands would ever play the halftime show. What they do is when they get a bunch of different artists like to collaborate together, like they did with Janet Jackson and all them, and Dre and Snoop Dogg and stuff like that. Those are my favorite halftime shows. So I don't really have anybody in mind that I'd like to see, but it would just be cool, like if you get like if Taylor Swift does show up when Usher's playing, like that might be awesome, like just to see them performing together when they never would.
So I got one that might actually be viable as a halftime show, and I think that you would agree with me on it. But mine would be Post Malone. I think Post Malone would be awesome.
I thought he had done it, but then I was thinking of The Weeknd.
Yeah.
But yeah, Post would be fantastic.
And first off, he could do a whole halftime show by himself because he has so many hits. But he's another one of those where there's enough artists similar to him that are very popular where they could do a mashup type thing.
Yeah.
Which would still be awesome. So
absolutely.
Hopefully someday. That would be cool.
Yeah. He'd do it too, I bet.
Yeah.
Did you ever see him on Impractical Jokers? It was hilarious.
Was he? Oh, yeah, with the car thing?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, that was so funny.
That was good stuff. All right.
So, the news. I didn't have anything to add because I couldn't think of anything.
Oh, good. I know a lot of stuff happened, and looking at NFL.com or ESPN for news over a span of 2 weeks is completely impossible because I know there were other coordinators that I thought I wanted to talk about, but I didn't write it down and I could not find the news on them. Not to mention they have just all these stupid fluff stories about the Super Bowl. So yeah, it's okay. But yeah, so we'll start off with the news from today, which kind of made me mad. When I saw the news, I was like, oh, so they're going to do it again next year. And then I was like, wait a minute, that was Peacock, not Amazon Prime. So the chances of next wild card weekend, 2 out of the 6 games being not available for free is a very high possibility.
Yep.
Because today they announced that Amazon Prime gets to stream a playoff game, which means that if Peacock does it again next year, that would mean 2 out of the 6 are on streaming content. Luckily, I have those streaming contents, but for everyone that doesn't and wants to watch these games that have always been free forever, now you can't. So that's kind of really annoying.
I was annoyed when they gave Amazon Prime Thursday Night Football to begin with. Like, that's already annoying that I have to pay. Like, I already have to pay YouTube to watch the damn Red Zone.
Mm-hmm.
And which is fine. I'm watching out-of-market games. If I didn't want to pay, I could watch regular TV. But if you want to watch Thursday Night Football or this playoff game, you have to pay. Yeah. And it's just all the streaming shit has gotten so ridiculous.
There should be like other options.
I feel like I'm getting to the point in my life where I'm like, man, things used to be so much better back in my day. Like, just let me watch damn TV. Why do I have to pay 17 different streaming services to watch everything when just give me a damn channel? Like, it's so freaking annoying.
Or when they pump these stupid rhetorics, like the first NFL game where the fourth quarter has no commercials, and then you watch it and there's still commercial breaks. They're just talking the entire time, and you're like,
right, which I don't want to listen to Chris Collinsworth talk that much anyways.
Exactly. Or when the Peacock playoff game was like, come be a part of history, and it's nothing different than any other game. The only history here is that you just made a bunch of money and now you're going to be greedy and put it on.
Force everybody to pay $6 to sign up, watch the game, then cancel immediately.
Yeah, exactly. So annoying, but that was the news, big news of the day. But big news of yesterday, NFL honors happened. And, there's some surprises in here. Mostly Coach of the Year to me. But maybe that's just because I'm a Lions fan.
I was kind of taken aback by it.
But the other one's not such big surprises to me. But we'll go over them real quick. The MVP went to Lamar Jackson. I never really went to look at his stats compared to everyone else. Was he leaps and bounds above or what? Because
I have no idea. I everybody was saying he was going to win it, even when his stats weren't like that much different than any other quarterback. They were just doing it because the Ravens were doing so well. And it's like, oh, we have to give MVP to a guy on the best team. Like, oh, I can't. Okay, that's not really what this. Like, I don't know, but
right. So I'm looking. He was 15th in yardage, 1,000 yards behind the guy at top. If we're looking at touchdowns, he was 11th with 12 touchdowns behind the number one person. He had 7 interceptions, which, is pretty good. That's down near the bottom of the league. But as far as passing stats go, his were pretty terrible. Not terrible. Sorry. Let me take that back. His were not up to par with more than 10 people in the NFL. So now I'm looking at his rushing to try to figure out if that gave him an edge. But where is this dude? Jackson. Lamar. Because the passing yards, there's no way he wins MVP off of that. Rushing, he had 821 yards and 5 touchdowns, which is his third best rushing year. So yeah. I don't know. Very odd.
No, they just gave it to him because the Ravens were 13-4. I don't know. They had a great year. Honestly, like if you wanted to look at stats wise, it probably should have been Dak as far as best quarterbacks. Like he had a great year. But yeah, it was just the press voted for Lamar Jackson because the Ravens did well. That's really the only reason. Or give it to McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey had a fantastic year. Yeah, but exactly. Gotta give it to a quarterback.
Yep. That's the only reason I was comparing him to other quarterbacks is because the MVP should just be called quarterback of the year at this point. Because there's no way McCaffrey was not MVP.
Well, and the problem with awards like this is like you're having like the press vote for it, and it's just look at the stats. Like just I don't know. If there should just be a way for them to computerize it.
Look at the Ravens in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, they probably voted for this before he choked in the championship game.
Oh man. Well, Christian McCaffrey. Why is my camera doing that? Please stop. There we go. All right, now it's not moving. That was weird. Christian McCaffrey did win Offensive Player of the Year, so he did not get completely shafted out of a.
Here's a question for you: if Christian McCaffrey is the best offensive player in the NFL, how did Lamar Jackson beat him for MVP? Why? Like, I understand having Defensive Player of the Year because they would never give an MVP to a defensive player, but you can't have an Offensive Player of the Year and an MVP award.
Yeah.
Because they counter each other out. Like, if you're the best offensive player, then you should have been the most valuable player. If you're the most valuable player and you play offense, how are you not the best offensive player? It's stupid. Like, it's just...
More awards. That's what it sounds like to me. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. But at least he got a trophy for his work.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for him. He deserved a trophy. He had a ridiculous year. But yeah, it's just... so dumb.
Kind of surprising that Myles Garrett wins Defensive Player of the Year over both TJ Watt and Micah Parsons. Both TJ Watt and Micah Parsons' stats were both better than Myles Garrett over the entirety of the season. But I will say this, all three of them deserving of Defensive Player of the Year. So it's not trying to take it away from Myles Garrett, but if it was stat only related, it would go to one of the other two. But as Micah Parsons tweeted when someone had put out a side-by-side of all their stats, Micah Parsons himself said, "I'm not glad I lost. This is why stats don't matter. If you watched Myles Garrett play this year, if you saw the tape, then you'd know why he won Defensive Player of the Year." So, there you go.
Yeah. I mean, again, I sure, Micah, like that's really nice of him to say. Um, I just, like you said, you look at the stats and there's literally nothing Myles Garrett did, um, to justify winning this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, T.J. Watt had more sacks. He had an interception. More tackles. Like, the only thing Myles Garrett did was have a stretch in the middle of the season where everybody was foaming at the mouth over him, talking about how amazing he was.
Yeah.
Then he did nothing after Thanksgiving, but they still just said, well, we already wrote his name in, we'll give him the award.
Yeah.
Like, they're so stupid.
Yeah, TJ Watt had 5 more sacks, 8 pass deflections to what's his face is Myles Garrett's 3, as well as an interception. 4 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, 1 fumble touchdown.
26 more tackles.
Yeah. TJ Watt got robbed.
Yeah, and TJ Watt even had a touchdown. He returned a fumble for a touchdown. Like, there's no reason Myles Garrett should have won this award. Other than, I remember everybody talking about, like, oh my gosh, look at he was like doing burpees or something during the game, like before the offense snapped the ball. I remember he was doing something like that, and everyone's like, oh, he's playing games with him. Yeah, great, but then you had 1 sack in the final 7 weeks of the season. So,
well, as you're going to see, obviously a lot of press from Ohio were voting in this, because the next 3 awards are Browns. Coach of the Year, Kevin Stefanski.
I don't know what the hell.
He didn't. I wrote this little note in here because last week our top 5 was best head coaches in the NFL right now. Do you know who was not listed by either one of us? Kevin Stefanski, who apparently has won his 2nd one of these. So as a Detroit fan, I'm just going to say this, despite, and if people want to call me a homer for it, whatever, but none of this lies. None of this is a lie. Lions had their best record, tied their best record ever. Lions won the NFC North Championship for the first time ever. The Lions won a home playoff game for the first time since 1957. The Lions won 2 playoff games this year. The last time they won a singular playoff game was 1992. So, someone please explain to me what the Browns did that would take away the award from Dan Campbell.
What the Browns did was everybody looked at them and said, they made the playoffs with Joe Flacco. Clearly, they're the best team in the country. Let's give them all the awards.
It's like,
that's what I did.
I wouldn't have been as mad if it was DeMeco Ryans, because he took a team that was expected to get a top 5 pick to the playoffs and won. At least DeMeco Ryans I would understand. Kevin Stefanski, I do not understand.
And who did DeMeco Ryans beat in the playoffs? Kevin Stefanski and the Browns. So, yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't know. I think, honestly, it feels like that everybody just felt sorry for the Browns because Deshaun Watson got hurt, and then they stumbled through a bunch of quarterbacks. And then Joe Flacco had a career resurgence, and oh, what a great story it is. And then, they fumbled against the Texans and looked like shit. But they're like, let's give them all the awards anyways. Why is Jim Schwartz... Oh, I guess the Browns' defense was number 1 this year, so sure, give him Assistant Coach of the Year. But Stefanski, whatever.
Yeah, Jim Schwartz. There's a name I don't like.
The reason Dan Campbell didn't win it is because everybody blames him for the Lions' loss, and they're like, lol, Dan Campbell sucks.
But we'll give Lamar an MVP after his game.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense.
I think he's the only quarterback to have 2 MVP awards, but not a Super Bowl. And frankly, probably will never get one. It's like, all right, enjoy those trophies, Marino.
Yeah, the last one, comeback player of the year, Joe Flacco, which kind of we're alluding to there, saying. So,
and a lot of people I saw were upset they didn't give it to Damar Hamlin.
But he didn't play.
Right. Flacco actually played and played well. I mean, Hamlin, yes, it was great that he, recovered and was able to be active and for some games, but it's not like he.
But he wasn't even a starter on the Bills, so
right. He was
came back
for a lot of games,
and he was He was a player that we were like, is he going to dress this week or is he not?
Yeah.
So
Flacco literally led the Browns to the playoffs, and no one expected that. That's a cool story. Give him that. Give Jim Schwartz, assistant coach of the year for having a number one defense. You can't give Stefanski coach of the year. Like, if you want to just give it to the best team, give it to Harbaugh and the Ravens.
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
Makes no sense. Offensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year, both from the Texans. So the second and the third pick in last year's draft win Rookie of the Year. So C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson Jr. Can't say I'm surprised they both were balling out.
Yeah, those are the only two I'm like, absolutely 100%. That's the right call.
For sure. And the Offensive Rookie of the Year had some good candidates like Puka Nacua and Zay Flowers. There's a few people, but no one did more for their team than C.J. Stroud did. So
right. I think Puka's probably the only one who maybe deserved it, but Stroud, as a obviously as a quarterback, leading the team, leading them to the playoffs, playing lights out, like, yeah, for sure.
Just mention of no consequence beyond just being a really cool award that they give to someone who actively works in their communities. NFL Man of the Year goes to Cameron Hayward of the Steelers. So that's pretty cool. That guy always seemed like a cool guy. Every interview they do in the Steelers games I've seen. So
I always like when they show who each team's Man of the Year is. That's always fun to see, like, which player on my teams are like the most revered.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of like in Madden when you go to see, like, who do the fans love the most? They're always like,
the jersey sales.
Not surprised. That one's surprising. That's cool.
Yeah, that was always fun.
Well, they announced the Hall of Fame class for next year as well at NFL Honors. There's some names in here that I'm not surprised to see. Bears kick returner Devin Hester. I am actually kind of surprised on that one because of the fact that most of his career was renowned for being a kick returner, and it lists him as a kick returner, not a wide receiver.
I wouldn't even say I would say his entire career.
I remember some burner touchdown. I would say I remember some burner touchdown catches, but everything you remember about him.
The most kick return touchdowns in NFL history. Like, he was electric. He deserves it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, you got the Colts defensive end Dwight Freeney. Not surprised on that one. That guy was a sack machine forever.
Yep.
Texans wide receiver Andre Johnson. That guy was a beast. Back when the two Johnsons in the NFL, Andre and Calvin, going back and forth.
Yes.
So
the Texans had Andre Johnson and DeAndre Hopkins at the same time for like a year or two.
Yeah, that. Talk about great receiver duos.
Yeah.
Next up, you have the Broncos linebacker Randy Grandishar. This must be an older player.
Yeah, he was one of the senior ones with Steve McMichael.
Okay, so yeah, Bears defensive lineman Steve McMichael. I've heard that name, but I figure he was also one of the older ones.
That's actually a pretty cool story. He was part of their like vaunted '80s defense. He is slowly dying from, I think, MS or Lou Gehrig's disease, one of those two. So they posted a video of like him finding out that he had made it. And it was pretty cool. So.
Did you ever see those types of videos? Those videos are always very cool to me, and that made me think of Did you ever see the video of the Hall of Fame guy going to Calvin Johnson's house, to his front door?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I love watching those where they like knock on the door and then they like immediately they know, like, the player knows why. And like gets emotional. Yeah, it's super cool.
The last two, 49ers linebacker Patrick Willis, who was always a beast.
I remember him.
And the Panthers defensive end Julius Peppers. I don't remember his stats. I don't remember him doing that for like 10 years. I just remember like a 4 or 5 year section of Peppers, but
I remember Peppers for a while. He was on the Panthers and he actually went to the Bears for a little bit. Like he was he was pretty dominant. Like, I mean, he was never uber dominant, but he was always a game wrecker.
Yeah, okay, so I'm looking at, he played for Carolina 2002 to 2009, 4 years on the Bears, 3 years on Green Bay, and 2 years back at Carolina. And inside all of those, he had multiple double-digit sack years. So of all those years, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, it's only about 5 years in there where he didn't have double digits, and those were all like 7 and 8, 9 sacks. So good on him. Yep, makes sense.
Another fun fact about Steve McMichael: he wrestled in WCW in the '90s.
Was he Mongo?
It was
Mongo McMichael?
Yep.
Dude, that's crazy.
Isn't that nuts? Yeah.
I never realized that was the same guy.
Yep.
That makes sense. I remember Mongo.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I know. Crazy. Well, I'll touch on this because my team hired a head coach, which was either their first or third choice, depending on who you ask. But Dan Quinn, the Dallas defensive coordinator, that has led the Cowboys defense to a couple good years in a row. So I'm okay with it. I'm not over the moon. I'm not upset. I'm more of, all right, well, let's see what happens. Same thing with our offensive coordinator, a name we recognize coming from Arizona, Cliff Kingsbury, which I'm a little less okay with this one, but I'm still not irate, simply because the Cardinals did do some good things under him. I think the problem stemmed from him as a head coach having a little too much say over the roster, all those 5'9" receivers he liked to draft. I'm a little more optimistic that with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, they'll identify good players and just Kingsbury will use them. But
I think that was the biggest thing I heard over the past week and a half, or well, week really since he was hired, was that maybe I think other people and other teams were looking at him like, okay, well, if he doesn't have to do all the things a head coach has to do, like press conferences, game planning, all this stuff that a head coach has to do, and can just focus on the offense, that maybe he'll be in a much better position. That maybe he's built better to be a coordinator in the NFL than he is to be a head coach, because he's a terrible head coach.
Did you ever see the in-season, was it Hard Knocks?
No, I didn't see Hard Knocks. The Cardinals in-season one? No.
He is not a leader of men. He never, like, in meetings or anything, he was never, like, a real motivator. Like, he never struck me as, like, the rallying guy. So, I think, yeah, if he's just in there scheming up plays to attack defense, it's like, all right, sure. The one part of this that absolutely makes me nervous are his ties to Caleb Williams, because I do not want us trading up one spot to draft Caleb Williams. I'd rather just sit at 2 and take Drake May or Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens.
We're about to be in for a wild ride.
Or watch us do something incredibly stupid like trade for Kyler Murray.
Oh, wow. That would be something.
That would be
See, here's why I don't think that'll happen. I don't think Kyler Murray likes Cliff Kingsbury. Because when I think of Cliff Kingsbury, I think of Kyler Murray coming to the sideline yelling, "Calm the fuck down."
I think Kyler just didn't respect him, so he just walked all over Kingsbury. Whereas with Gannon, you could tell Kyler's like, "Oh, I got to get my shit together."
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, I don't know, man. It's funny. You go on Commander's Twitter and you get the people who are like freaking out and jumping over. When we hired Ron Rivera 2.0, he's the exact. It's like, no, dude, he's not the exact same. Everybody talks about Dan Quinn as a leader and like players love him. Like Ron just never had that type of stature. He'd stand on the sideline folding his arms. He showed no emotion. Where Dan Quinn is more of an emotional leader and I think can motivate and rally people. But again, the problem is we just have very little talent on our team thanks to Ron Rivera. It's going to take a couple of years of like rebuilding the entire roster before we're relevant anyways. So
yep, makes sense to me.
The last one, Seahawks hired Mike McDonald, former Baltimore defensive coordinator. He was the young hot shot coach everyone wanted after Ben Johnson decided to stay in Detroit.
Yep. Seahawks get him. We'll see what happens there.
Weird, though, that Jim Schwartz won Assistant Coach of the Year, but didn't get it. It wasn't hired anywhere. But this guy was, because he's young and that's like the hot thing in the NFL right now is, I'm going to hire a 30-something-year-old.
Listen, as a Lions fan, Jim Schwartz should never go anywhere near head coach.
But if you're going to award a guy Assistant Coach of the Year, wouldn't that be the best assistant coach in the NFL? Ergo, the one everybody would want to be their coach.
How many Assistant Coach of the Years did Josh McDaniels win?
I have no idea. I didn't know that was an award until this year.
I
don't remember anybody winning Assistant Coach of the Year before.
I don't think Josh Daniels should be a head coach either, and I'm sure.
No, he shouldn't.
I'm gonna look it up. Assistant Coach of the Year history. Oh, there's a bunch of them. All right, so here we go. Started in 2014. Todd Bowles, Wade Phillips, Kyle Shanahan, Pat Shurmur, Vic Fangio, Greg Roman, Brian Dable, Dan Quinn, D'Amico Ryans, Jim Schwartz. A lot of those went on to become head coaches after that. So
they did, yeah.
Maybe next year will be Jim Schwartz's year.
Get another chance.
All I can say is I know why no one would hire him as a Lions fan.
No, yeah, I get that. I remember him as coach of the Lions. I just mean like.
No, I get what you mean. I get what you mean.
Yeah.
If there was no Lions tie there, I'd be like, yeah, you're right. That doesn't make any sense. So. All right. Well, let's get into the divisional matchups. Starting with the Chiefs and the Ravens, where the Chiefs won 17-10 against the Ravens in a game that looked absolutely like the Ravens snuck into the playoffs and the Chiefs were the number 1 seed.
Yeah, this game was so boring.
It was
and
really
the Ravens
boring.
The Ravens just never showed up. They were just like, wow, and we're done, I guess. Well, we won a game.
And then when they did things, they shot themselves in the foot. Zay Jones getting the ball punched out right before he scored. Zay Jones making a big play, then standing over the receiver after he caught the ball, pushing the ball back, and then not scoring more than a field goal, I think, on that drive. Like, the Ravens, Zay Jones really screwed them there.
Flowers.
Sorry, yeah, Zay Flowers. There's how many people are named Zay? But Zay Flowers, yeah, he kind of really screwed them over there in that game. But not only him. Those are just the two I definitely remember. But Lamar didn't. Was the number 1 rushing offense in the NFL. After halfway through the first quarter, they did not run the ball again.
No.
So explain that. Like, not to mention it was really, really cold where they were playing, and they threw the ball the entire game on a rushing team. It made no sense what they were doing.
Gus Edwards had 3 carries for 20 yards, and Lamar Jackson had 8 carries. And Zay Flowers had 2. They gave the ball to running backs 6 times, and Lamar threw it 37. Yeah. I mean, part of it, I don't know if they were trying to, like, Lamar's going to win this game for us, so everybody will shut up about him choking in the playoffs, and then he choked in the playoffs, or just a complete misunderstanding about how to win January football games by the Ravens. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was very bad. Very bad showing. Chiefs make the Super Bowl again. 4th time in 5 years, I think it is.
Do.
Super fun. Super fun.
That is why this Super Bowl, I just do not care about.
Well,
I don't care about the Chiefs in it. I don't care about the 49ers. I don't know. I don't have any. I don't want the Chiefs to lose just because I'm tired of them winning. Because I also just don't care about the 49ers winning. I just if the Chiefs win, whatever. If the 49ers win, whatever. I'm like, I'm going to eat food and I'm going to live bet.
I just want a good game. I just want it to be fun to watch to the end.
Yeah. I'm just going to be sitting there on my phone on FanDuel's app. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna catch this. Christian McCaffrey's over under. He's got 50 yards rushing. I'm gonna bet the over on 60 because he's gonna get 10 more.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I did during the Lions game. I showed you that text, not to brag. I blind bet during the Lions game and won $250 on like a 12-leg parlay. It was nuts.
I remember. That was pretty crazy.
Yeah. This is the one good thing about the Lions game.
Yeah, so the Lions, 49ers win 34-31 because the Lions could not score in the second half until the last 2 minutes of the game. With a bunch of blunders in there.
49ers from scoring either.
Yeah, well, I mean, multiple times they could have at least scored to stop the momentum, but instead they went on for it on fourth down like they do. Don't blame them for that, but they do, and they got stopped. And so the momentum just continued for the 49ers. Whereas if you kicked the ball and you made it, because there's no guarantee you was going to make it because we had multiple kickers this year and they all sucked. So I understand not going to Badgley because he sucked. The guy we had before him sucked. But at least kicking the field goal, and if he had made it, it would have stopped all the scoring of the 49ers and maybe, changed the momentum a little. But they couldn't. This has been a theme all year. I've mentioned it on this podcast. I've mentioned it in our group text about the turd quarter. Well, they had a whole turd entire half, and it cost them the Super Bowl. Because what was the score at halftime? 24-7? Yeah. 24-7 they were winning at halftime, and then they wind up losing 34-31, blowing a chance at the Super Bowl. So biggest lead ever given up in a championship game. Understand that. Also, big leads get blown all the time in Super Bowls, championships, divisional rounds, all the time. I don't feel like it's massive news. Here's the part that pissed me off about this game after it happened. I did not hear a singular peep about the Ravens game for the entire week after the championship games. But everybody wanted to talk about Dan Campbell. Yep. No one talked about Lamar choking or the game plan of John Harbaugh after it happened. No, it was, Dan Campbell gave up 17 points, lost the chance at the Super Bowl. Is that a fireable offense? I'm like, Jesus Christ, are you kidding me? This is the best season the Lions have ever had. And yes, they just blew a chance at the Super Bowl. But you would fire someone for that? Are you kidding me? Who are you going to hire that's better? It doesn't.
Yeah, I saw somebody commenting about them firing him, and my first thought was, you don't know anything about football.
Yeah.
If you honestly think that a team like Detroit that has suffered for so long would fire the coach that brought them all the way to the NFC Championship game just because he gambled and it didn't work out. Do I agree with him going for it both times? No. I'm also not going to sit here and say, what a dumbass, he needs to be fired. Like, that's a ridiculous overreaction. I wouldn't have done it, but that doesn't mean that he, it's just people don't know anything about the Lions, and they just look at it on paper and say, well, they went for it and lost, that's stupid. Yeah. Or the people that are like, the Lions suck, and they've just been waiting all season for this to happen so that they could see, we knew the Lions would choke, la-da-da-da-da.
Yeah. Jealousy for fans. As far as fans go, I don't care what they say. Listening to national columnists say shit like this, it's like, I don't know how you have a job. Are you kidding me? Like,
that's because their entire job is to just stroke the ego of the same 5 teams every year. Yeah. And anytime a different team steps up, they just like, well, I'm not going to talk about Detroit. I'm going to talk about Kansas City or Baltimore or Green Bay or Dallas. Those are the only teams I talk about.
And if Baltimore shits the bed, we're not going to go completely radio silent about them because let's just help
Lamar an MVP trophy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so I don't know. The game was heartbreaking, but I will never forget this year's playoffs because
and everybody's blaming Dan Campbell, and again, as if the Lions didn't give up 27 points in the second half. That's not, and yeah, I know what you said about momentum. And again, I think he should have kicked it at the very least when they're up by 14. But at the same time, where's Aaron Glenn being blamed for not being able to fucking stop the 49ers in the second half? Like, everybody just wants to talk about Campbell going for it. Like, there are a lot more things that went wrong.
And here's the stupidest part. It worked. They went for it on 4th down and it worked. Josh Reynolds just dropped the goddamn ball. If he holds on to it, there's no issue here. Like, that's the stupidest part. The call to go for it was not wrong. And if you paid attention to the Lions, which most people don't, they don't understand that they did that every single game of the year. And that is why they were there. Because it didn't work on the biggest stage with all the eyes watching, and the people know nothing about Dan Campbell, that's what they want to talk about. But the fact of the matter is, that's how he coaches. And that's what's worked for Detroit. So that's why I can't be mad about it. I can question it, but I would never have questioned that he was going for it. I always know he's going for it. I know that because I watch every game. And I know if it comes down to inside of 5 yards on 4th down in positions like this, he goes for it. So, I don't know.
Well, and the other thing, too, like, after they went for it the first time and then San Francisco scored, and then Gibbs fumbled right away. If Gibbs doesn't fumble there, then the Lions can get a drive going, maybe score, because they've been driving all game. It's completely different. It's because that fumble, and all of a sudden the 49ers score 14 points in 2 minutes, that the momentum swings. Again, not Dan Campbell's fault. Like, it's everybody just wants to blame Campbell and call, oh, what a shitty coach, what a dumb decision. Like, no, unfortunately, a lot of shit happened. Like, that's how it works. Like, it's not always just one thing that loses you a game.
Exactly.
But yeah, everybody just hates on Dan Campbell because he does things they wouldn't do. And God forbid you think differently. Don't be different.
Exactly. Well,
all right. Well, you want to go into the playoff check-in?
Yeah, so playoff check-in. For Richie, missed out on both sides of the Super Bowl. He had the Bills over the Eagles. Neither team managed to make it.
No.
I managed to get one half of the Super Bowl right. So, but I picked the Bengals over the 49ers, and I think picking the Bengals to win the Super Bowl and them not making the playoffs, but still getting one of the two teams right is still less than yours because at least both of your guys made the playoffs. I don't know.
It like cancels each other out. Like I had two playoff teams. You had a non-playoff team and an actual Super Bowl participant. So it's basically even.
We'll call it even on the check-in there. So
yeah.
We'll into playoff picks from the division standings. Well, Richie, you beat me in playoff picks, so there you go.
I did because I knew the NFL script. I knew the Chiefs were going to make it because lol, it's the Chiefs, and then I knew the Lions weren't going to make it because there was no way the NFL was going to allow that to happen.
Yep. So I picked the Ravens and the Lions, and I figured I was going to go 1-1. I almost went 1-1, but the opposite of what I thought.
Yeah.
But no, I went 0-2 in the divisional round, and you went 2-0, which makes it 8-4 to 6-6. So even if we were to pick different on the Super Bowl and I won it, you'd still have better picks than me on this in the playoffs.
Well,
so.
I mean, but during the regular season, you beat me by like 15. So.
I mean, yeah, but that's so long ago, you know.
That was last year. Well, I'll say this: if you want a chance to win, we can make the Super Bowl worth 5, but I'm taking the Chiefs, and you have to take the 49ers.
I'm down for that. I'm going to pick the 49ers, so.
All right, that works. I'll take the Chiefs. There's no doubt in my mind that the Chiefs are going to win this game.
Gotcha.
And we'll even put worth 5 points, so we remember this. Because our next podcast will be like a free agency preview, and we'll probably have forgotten by then.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I was going to take the 49ers anyway. I feel like they had 2 very dud games against the Packers and the Lions. They better come out strong in this one. After 2 weeks, I think they can. So,
I just
not to mention, I heard that the Chiefs are starting Kadarius Toney. So, get ready for the drop show.
probably.
By the way, hilarious on Radio Row, Kadarius Toney trying to explain away his Instagram rant about the Chiefs as it being misunderstood. No, sir. It was recorded. Everyone has heard it. There's no misinterpreting you talking shit about the Chiefs. I don't know how you're playing this game. I don't know how anyone would have misinterpreted that. But it's hilarious to watch you try to cover your ass on Radio Row. That was pretty funny to me.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what the Chiefs are thinking sometimes. And if you look at like talent wise, like the 49ers are stacked, but there's just that part of me that just looks at it like, of course the Chiefs are gonna win because they're the NFL darling and they're the media darling and they're Taylor Swift's darlings, and just it's all just too perfect. Yeah. Plus, with the 49ers being favored, the Chiefs' money line is plus money right now. That's ridiculous. I placed a bet on that. Like,
you're like, quick, throw some money at it.
I was like, yeah, that's pretty sweet. But we'll see. Sure. If it's a high-scoring game, that would be exciting. I don't expect a high-scoring game. I don't know why I think the Super Bowl is just going to suck. I feel like this game is so underwhelming in my mind that I'm just like going to see a 10-7 game or something stupid.
Yeah, I don't know. Very boring.
That's why I'm like, just give me good food, give me some fun bets to make. I've got my squares going. Like that's all I care about.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. All right, Richie, you have any final year wrap-ups before we go? Anything else you want to say?
Please God, don't trade up for Caleb Williams.
I like it. All right. Well,
somebody out there will hear me.
Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out this season for season 2 of the podcast. We will be back soon for free agency and the start of season 3. So until then, I hope you have a great.
Because sorry to interrupt, but free agency starts March 11th. So it's actually not too long from now. I think like 2 or 3 weeks. We'll probably have to do like a preview podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty exciting.
Creeping up already.
I love that. Last year when we looked at the RAS scores and like for the draft, it made our pick the players we liked and I kept track of them. Like I had fun, dude. I'm looking forward to doing that again. Off season, I mean, I'm a Commanders fan, so it makes sense. But the off season's always more exciting to me than the regular season.
Yeah, it's very weird to me that the Lions have the 29th pick in the first round.
I know.
I'm like,
it's like one of those where it's like they're not even going to draft a starter. They're going to draft a backup.
Very weird. I'm not used to being outside the top 10, so
I'm excited because, like, obviously my dad being a Bears fan, they pick first, and then we pick second. The Cardinals pick fourth. Like, there's a lot of action for my teams at the top of the draft this year.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see what happens. Until free agency starts, and we do that podcast. Thanks everybody for being here for season 2. We're wrapping it up, and we'll be back again for a whole new season. Until then, hope you all have a great one and enjoy your Super Bowl. Until then,
yes, sir.
We will catch you on the flippity flip.